Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to Ngā Kōrero Mō Te Wā Ki Te Heke Mai o Te Mātauranga, Conversations on the Future of Education. My guest in this episode is Te Rina Leonard, the Chief Executive Officer of Te Kura, the Correspondence School. At today's session, we're looking at, are we building schools for systems or students? Well, tēnā koe, Te Rina, and thanks so much for taking the opportunity to have a conversation about the future of education with me. In other episodes of this, I've just invited people to tell us a little bit about your background, because that's an important thing to understand, where we're coming from with a lot of the perspectives. So what's brought you to the place you're in?
Oh, what a Derek. Well, lots of things. To start off with, I whakapapa to Tauranga, Moana and Te Aroa, that's where my father's from. Brought up in the deep south, Waihopai and Vikago. So, I feel like I've got grounding in some pretty solid places. Live in Porirua now, mum of two, and, a lifetime of experience of being in education. When I was 18, I had this really strong inkling that I wanted to become a psychologist. I didn't really know what that was, to be honest. I'd never met a psychologist before, but I felt like that was something that I could do. And it was because it was about kids. And it was about helping those kids that weren't getting a fair deal. Because I saw, I've seen that, as all of us have, in schools and in communities. So the funny thing about this is that I ended up enrolling myself in physiology at Otago because I didn't know how to spell psychology. Found out just in time what psychology, and indeed I trained as a psychologist, ed psych, loved it. And from that point, it was all about how do we support those kids with the most to gain from our support. And that's always been my focus. So it's taken me to places like Ero, Ministry of Education, Te Puni Kōkiri, policy, operational, valuation roles, and to the best job that I've been in. Best and hardest. Every day is hard, but as it should be, to being Chief Executive of Te Aho Te Kura Pounamu, which I love.
And so I can imagine you do. And of course, I've had some experience at Te Kura as well. And it was an experience that I wouldn't want to swap out. But it is interesting thinking about what you've just said about the focus on the learner. As an ed psych, it's actually about the needs of that learner. And I think it'd be interesting, perhaps for people who aren't too familiar with the work of Te Kura, to blend or just explain, what is the scope of the organisation? Because it's huge. You've got a lot of students.
We've got a lot going on at Te Kura. We do a number of different things, and we serve a number of different student populations, and they are all important. The student population that I think we are most focused on, because they are most dependent upon us to support them in their learning, are those ākonga who come through, those students who come through as our full-time students. Now, 80% of those ākonga come through the Ministry of Education referrals, and they are with Te Kura because they are unable to get their needs met within face-to-face schools. Now, this is not a beat-up of face-to-face schools at all. Sure. Face-to-face schools do a brilliant job. However, those of us in education know we can't be everything for all kids. And so I'm really proud that Aotearoa has the option of Te Kura to support those kids who aren't getting their needs met within their local schools, within face-to-face schools, for whatever circumstance or reason. Generally, these kids come with a lot of different circumstances, needs, and they need a different kind of educational experience. So, hence when you put on the ed psych hat, and you think, what have we learned so far about what works and what doesn't work? Where are the strengths? Where are the opportunities? And what are the areas that this young person needs a bit more or a significantly more support in their lives, and they may not have ever got it anywhere else before? So, it's the opportunity to think more laterally. we're not caught by timetables. We're not caught out by a lot of property management. We do have offices across Aotearoa, so that does take up some time, but we have a lot more freedom to think differently about learning and what it might mean for that young person.
Yeah.
Also, we have thousands. So we're not talking about a couple hundred. We're talking about, at any one time, about 8,000 full-time students.
Wow.
And so that's a real honour, and it's a huge opportunity.
Mm.
If you think of Aotearoa, 8,000 young people, what an opportunity.
When you hear numbers like that, Tarina, my mind immediately goes to system. When I think about the number right across New Zealand, and every school has students in it that have the needs that you have described. And I remember back when I was working at Te Kura, it was often referred to almost disparagingly as the school of last resort. It was the thing that is the backstop when the real stuff isn't working. But I think you've got a different perspective on that, right? It's about where it fits in the system. Do you want to unpack a bit of that for me?
I'd love to. I'd love to, because I'd heard that mythology as well. Um, our families would tell us that we're the school that reopens, that opens up those pathways, that re-engages. So we are I think there was a Herald article last year on Te Kura, and it talked about Te Kura as being the safety net of the education system. And I really like that, because we don't want to lose one young person from the education system. And so we are there to look at education differently for young people. And it may be for a term, it may be for that time in their lives where they are needing something quite different. They cannot be in their face to face school, mental health, family circumstances, whatever. Or it might be just that a young person has a completely different learning experience. And that's important too. So, we are there for young New Zealanders,
Yes.
essentially with no judgment. We say that everyone's welcome. We think if you come to Te Kura is the right place for you.
So if we pick up on the idea of the future of education with putting your ministry hat on perhaps and thinking about how the system can best serve the diverse range of students that we have, and it's increasing, isn't it? How would you describe the role of an organization or an institution like Te Kura within the future of education? How should we be thinking about it?
Yeah, great question, Derek. I believe the most important thing in education is our ability to flex to kids' needs.
Good.
Uh, Too often we expect kids in whānau to flex to the school, to the face-to-face, to the requirements, to the structure. So Te Kura's role, future-wise, provides that space where education is able to flex very easily to kids and whānau needs without judgment,
Right.
with no judgment. We can also provide a potential role working with other schools to provide that flex alongside it. So we will never say that we are great by ourselves. We know we are our best when we're working with our colleagues and with other agencies and organisations in whānau. Um, we can provide the flex. Summer schools are a great example of that.
Yeah.
This year, 4,000 kids.
Wow.
We had
Cool.
4,000 kids come to us to get that extra nudge towards the NCA so they can carry on their pathway. They did that in a completely flexible way. They still did the work. It's still heavily moderated. It's with registered teachers, all of that stuff. But they did it, alongside their summer commitments, alongside their whānau commitments, to get over the line so they're ready to keep on going in their pathway. I think we could, and that's a great example, I think, of pivoting. I think as a system, we could pivot more, but it would require us to work together more closely and less in competition.
I'm loving what I hear you say there. It resonates with me because I've been working. Just one example. I've been working in a secondary school for the last 5 years, supporting how they work and develop. And it's not a particularly big secondary school, so they're like so many. They have to think carefully about where they put their resources for different subject needs and this sort of thing. And to use your term, they're constantly flexing because each year brings a different demand. But one of the things that I've admired in the school, they've got one staff member there with a designated role of being the interface with Te because they have Te students in that school. And she does a marvelous job, almost on a daily basis, assessing and keeping up and monitoring what those students need. And as a result, during the 5 years that I've seen the other side of what I experienced when I worked at Te of students who actually have access to the things that they want to learn about and know about and grow and develop in, but they don't have to leave or separate themselves from the community that they're a part of. And I think that to me is a real strength of what you're doing.
Well, we know when we have that person in place in a school or community, that makes all the difference, because essentially education comes down to our human connection.
Yeah,
And we find it really hard. We want to have connection with our kids, and we do far more now in terms of our huinga ako. But to have that person in the school who is that human connector, who can say, "Come on, Derek, you haven't done any calc this week. What's happening? I know you love your English, but you actually need to get onto that too. Or do we need to have a talk about calc?" To be that person, gosh, it makes all the difference. So, that's a really great example of how we can be successful together.
yeah, and that's what the point, isn't it? It's about partnership. The schools need to be partnering with you with the same vision that you have for partnering with them. And I
Absolutely.
guess as I look around, I'll be curious on your thoughts because for so long, Takura sort of, and still is, as I understand, sort of struggling to gain the full recognition as a key part of our system. And now we're seeing bubble up around the place these other small initiatives of people who are seeing the same potential, but on a much smaller scale. We've seen some through the charter school system. We've seen some other schools adding that to the area. And I just wonder what your thoughts are in terms of the future of education for how this might work together in a more coherent way. What is the opportunity here?
Uh, I'm an optimist when it comes to education, and I know you are as well. So, and I think there's huge opportunity for us to uh, recenter ourselves around the young people and see us in service of that connection they have with education.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that means perhaps taking not the lens completely off, um, but off like this some of these measures that we're currently investing in, like school attendance, because that doesn't capture everything. Um, we were talking earlier around the difference between attending and engaging, and there's vast differences.
yeah,
So to get more nuanced about it, so if our system can reorient itself around students versus structures and measures that I would argue tell us at a superficial level what young people are doing, but not at a meaningful level.
yeah. I
And we
think
can.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think listening to what you're saying and a comment you made just earlier in that piece about being vested together in
Yes,
supporting students seems to me to be the thing that resonates most here. That if we can think of ourselves as system players, because talking with Barley Hark earlier
yes,
this year on one of these other episodes, he emphasized the disservice that we've done in our schooling system that's through a lot of this individualization of schools, the autonomy that schools have has led to competition rather than this working together. What do you reckon are some key things that if you were talking to a principal in a school right now, what would be some of the key messages that you would like to convey about how we could develop the systemness more appropriately?
absolutely. But the first thing I always say to principals is that we're not in competition with you. We don't want to be in competition with you at all, at all. So we're not trying to drive up our numbers. What we're trying to do though is to ensure that our kids get the best deal possible. And often that might mean a collaboration. So we are part of the system, we are colleagues, we want to work alongside um, our colleagues in face-to-face schools, if we could see some more merging instead of this like school, Te Kura over there, and us all together, like, because we are kaupapa based. I don't know many educationalists who come into education for the money or the glory.
No.
Um, Generally, we all come in for the kids.
Yes.
Generally we're optimistic about young people and we get excited when we see them flying. We also get heartbroken when we see that they're not flying.
Yeah.
So, that's fundamentally what motivates me. I don't care about the credit. So we are behind lots of really successful initiatives, and Te Kura doesn't get mentioned. I don't mind as long as we continue to make a difference because we're not in it for the glory or for the credit at all. That's our reward is seeing young people fly.
So it seems that where you got to there and what you started off before about talking about the measures of success becomes really important there. Because I think if we're focused on bums on seats, we go down the competitive way. If we
Yep.
focus on measuring success, then we understand that no one part of the system can achieve that altogether. Am I right?
Oh, look, that's I love the way you put that together, Derek. Absolutely right, and that it's cumulative.
Mm,
It's part of the cumulative effort of everyone alongside that akonga and their whānau, but it also reflects their journey in education. So, uh, it's frustrating when schools get measured on their, say, year 13 results, when we know that is a reflection of a whole heap of inputs,
yes.
whole heap of years. So let's get away from the superficial ranking, bums on seats, and get into some more meaningful assessment that will help young people. That
It,
has to be our motivator.
Yeah, and I mean, when you start talking like that, other things start coming to my mind. They're like, how do we maintain and sustain a record of learning? How do we
Yes.
provide, an evidence base that supports that rather than just a number on a page and so forth, eh? Mm.
Absolutely, and do it in a way that isn't a disservice to the young person. No, it's fine if you're the parent or if you're a young person who is able to retain information well, likes language, likes routine, um, is can is under instructional control, is what we'd say as ed sites. You will get a lovely report. You'll get a
Yep.
lovely journey through. But if you're not, you might get years of being repeatedly told that you're failing, that you don't fit, you don't belong, and that is not good for young people, and it is actually isn't true.
Yeah,
Fundamentally, it's untrue.
that's fine. Yeah, that's what Rebecca Winthrop in her book, The Disengaged Team, talks about the
Yeah,
passengers in our service system, who just sit there and kind of comply and conform until such point they just drop out.
yeah, yeah,
What one of the things that came to my mind as you're talking there, though, and it goes back to the partnership, that's often been a critique of or criticism, shall we say, even of Te Kura, is that partnership with parents and whānau. I mean, it's a given that we talk about that in the school system and all that sort of thing, and it's often been levelled at Te Kura's way of operating, wrong assumptions, I'd say, that parents are sidelined during this, that they don't see what their kids are doing. There isn't the school that they can go to a celebration event. How do you address that?
Uh, well, we do it our way, and yeah, we can always improve. Like that's something that all schools are constantly, engaging with and trying to work out better ways of engaging with whānau. I mean, we've just had our era review. It'll be released later on this week, and they've noticed that Te Kura's become even more effective at engaging whānau at the beginning. So, we're cracking that because we know that how whānau and akonga start with us is really, really important, just for confidence and also to get roles clear so that if you're a whānau, you've got a 7-year-old with us, and we do have 7-year-olds with us, you do need to be present. You
Mm,
do need to be engaging with us. You do need to be engaging with your young person. It's not a hands off. We need you there for your young person. That's a little bit different if your young person is 17, but they still need you in a different kind of way,
Mm.
similar to schools. We have celebrations, we have events, we have lots of face to face. Some whānau can't make it because of where they live. We have whānau who drive 3, 4 hours for events,
Wow.
like amazing, amazing whānau. Do we get every single whānau involved? No, we will keep on trying.
Yeah,
We are thinking of different ways we can do that, utilising more of the online platforms, but we find our whānau, they're really hungry for face to face.
yeah,
They want to meet their teachers, just like, you would have when you had your kids in the schools, and I
sure.
did too.
Yeah,
Yeah, I wanted to eyeball them,
yeah, yeah.
and they want to eyeball us too.
Exactly. I think thinking on that partnership line, one of the other things that you've done over the last, I don't know how many years, is you've become inspired by the big picture school
Yes,
thing.
yes,
And I
yes.
know that a key part of big picture is that partnership um, with community, with organizations, with workplace and so forth. How's that playing out? How's that adding value to some of the services you provide?
Oh gosh, that's been a real shift for us in our practice, and we're
Right.
really seeing the benefits for our young people and whānau. We have a growing group within Te Kura called the Leaving to Learn team,
Oh, yes.
and that's a team of committed, energetic extroverts mainly, who are getting out there in community and finding internships for our young people, finding shadowing opportunities, finding opportunities to talk to people that. So, like when I was 18 and I thought I might want to become a psychologist and blindly went into it, if I was at Te Kura, someone would have organised an informational interview with me with a psychologist.
Right.
Um, I wouldn't have been able to go into them with sessions, but I could have understood what the day looked like. I could have understood what the training was like. Didn't know it was going to take me 6 years, for example, all that kind of stuff. And so that's what we're doing for our young people. Uh, it's really important, and young people will tell us they want to see the relevance of education. They
Mm.
want to know, why do I have to learn this? And I think that's fair enough. So the Leaving to Learn side helps particularly with our young adults. So we have a large population of young adults who come in to Te Kura who who've left school. So uh, young people can come to Te Kura for free, and they can come without a ministry referral from the time they're 16, and they can stay
Right.
with us until their 20th birthday for free. It's part of their compulsory education. So, that's something that I'm really keen for young New Zealanders to know, that we are a choice. Often, typically many of our young adults come with no qualification, and just knowing they need education.
Mm.
They're not silly. They know they need the education, but not knowing where to start. So we start with Leaving to Learn, because that's the relevance piece. If
Sure.
I know you are interested in trees,
Mhm.
we start from there,
Yep.
and then we build from there. We do not start from the you're 16, we're going to get you your literacy and numeracy prereqs. I'm going to do this. We don't start from that place.
Yep.
It ends up at that place, but I will know why I need those prerequisites so I can carry on and get my forestry, whatever, or my horticulture diploma to get through there,
Right.
which will keep me engaged when I get bored or disheartened or want to play on my computer because I'm 16.
Yeah. So, Tarina, I mean, listening to everything you've said and focusing back on our conversation about the future of education, you've painted a picture here that where the future is not necessarily time or place bound, where it's focusing on partnerships, parents, whānau, community, businesses, organizations, and it's perhaps also restructuring, rethinking the role of teachers in all of this, because I can't imagine teachers in your institution, rocking up and doing a face-based, place-based, 9 till 3 type of thing. It requires a whole different set of skills and outlook on what my role is as an educator, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And also acknowledging that there are other people that might need to sit around young people as well. So we've had points where we thought, I wonder if teachers could just as part of their role find the internships.
Yep.
And teachers quite rightly came back to us and said, actually, we're teachers. We want to focus on teaching our kids. Absolutely see the relevant stuff, but our plate's full. And so, we need to take that on board too. So hence getting internship coordinators in to who can work with our kaiako. Also having a particular role within Te Kura that we call the kaimanaki. And in big picture terms, that's a learning advisor. For us, we've called it the kaimanaki because it really captures the spirit of what we hope our teachers do, which is to really care for a particular group of students as they travel through Te Kura. Only 15. And so if I'm your kaimanaki, Derek, then you are part of a group of 15, Mauropu Manaki. It's kind of like a form class, but a little bit different. Because it's my role to really get to know you and to care for you while you're at Te Kura. That might be talking to your calc teacher and saying, look, it's not really working for Derek. He got big hurt feelings when you gave that feedback.
Right.
Sometimes it happens with teachers. And so they're their person. So it does broaden the role of the teacher to some extent. But again, also recognizing there are some things that other people can do. And we can work as a team, similar as we were talking before. Now I'm just
Yeah.
going to turn this off.
That,
Apologies.
that last thing you're saying there about team really resonates with me because it comes back to the earlier part of our conversation about system and seeing ourselves working together in the interest of the student. And so many schools seem to operate internally, even with isolated classrooms and working in isolation. How important do you think this is to that whole notion of the future of education?
I've seen that too, Derek, sort of the black box of teaching and learning where what happens is mine and no one else is allowed to look at it. And I think that is not healthy for anyone. So, we are at Te Kura, one of our key values is whanaungatanga, and we say that's how we team.
Hmm.
We have three values, and overarched by our konga at the centre. So whanaungatanga is how we team, and that's through positive, accountable relationships.
Oh,
Doesn't mean that we are always nice to one another, because that doesn't always work, but we're accountable. So I might say to you, Derek, you said that you would contact Jane last week. You haven't contacted her. Please, when are you going to do it? So it can be robust.
yeah,
Like I think sometimes within whanaungatanga, people think that means it's all lovely all the time. No, just like in any whānau, you're accountable. So we understand that it takes a team to get anything done, and you cannot rely on one person. It's not fair on that kaiako to hold so you're very big on that.
oh, that's great. Well, look, I'm could talk like this for ages, but I'm going to round it off there in the interest of just keeping this episode to time. But thank you for what you've shared because I think the perspective of the role of an organisation like Te Kura is often just left to the periphery. We forget about it. And then every now and again we see someone come up with this great idea of I'm going to start an online class for so and so as if it's never been done before. But you guys, you've got over 100 years, right? It's we've been doing this.
Well, Derek, I need to acknowledge your role in the online part because you started that. You were well and truly, ahead of that, and so you laid the foundations for where we are today. So, want to acknowledge that you have played a very important part in the whakapapa of Te Kura.
Thank you, Te Rina. And with that, I'll thank you and let's have a conversation on another. Okay. Ka kite.
Lovely. Kia ora. Thanks, Derek.